This is your daily rundown, November 19, 2018. Local and national news by KPPP-LP. Hey everyone, this is Cindy.
And this is Duke.
You're listening to 88.1 FM, KPPP-LP Fargo-Moorhead, adding local color to your airwaves.
In local news from the Inform.com, Bismarck. About 57% of eligible voters in North Dakota cast a ballot earlier this month, representing the highest turnout rate in a midterm election here since 1986, Secretary of State Al Jaeger said Monday, November 19th. According to data published on the Secretary of State's website, 330,598 of an estimated 579,621 eligible voters cast a ballot during the midterm, which traditionally have lower voter turnout than presidential elections. This year's higher than normal turnout was fueled by the U.S. Senate contest between Democrat Heidi Heitkamp and Republican Kevin Cramer, as well as a ballot measure to legalize recreational marijuana. Cramer defeated Heitkamp and voters declined to legalize the drug. In 1986, Jaeger noted Democrat Kent Conrad narrowly defeated incumbent Republican Senator Mark Andrews. Voter turnout that year was 64%, higher than even the 2016 presidential election. Meanwhile, almost 48% of North Dakota voters cast their ballot before the election day and through absentee and vote-by-mail ballots as well as early voting centers.
Interesting. I was, it almost feels like they're bragging about the fact that Cramer won.
Yeah.
And that, the legalization of marijuana didn't pass.
Yeah, it seems that way too.
Because Jaeger has been the Secretary of State, and all the time that he's been Secretary of State, there has been voter suppression, even though North Dakota is a state that doesn't require you can do same-day registration. You don't have to pre-register.
Yeah, there's no voter registration in North Dakota, one of the only states in the whole union that doesn't have voter registration. Plus, I think it's interesting, the numbers they put in here, there's only 775,000 people that live in North Dakota.
I know.
And they say in this article that, in the Inform, that they estimate 579,000, almost, 580,000 people as potential registered voters. That's like 3/4 of the people. That means North Dakota has a higher age, and it has very few young people, according to those statistics.
That's true. But they don't talk about the voter suppression of Native Americans, which I'm sure is another thing that Jaeger is pretty jazzed about because he's the author, and sadly he got reelected.
Yeah, he's still in for another 4 years. Well, here's another North Dakota Inform.com story. Bismarck, North Dakota. North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum offered a few Thanksgiving-themed quips as he pardoned 2 turkeys at the state capitol Monday on November 19th. Burgum highlighted the work of organizations helping domestic and sexual assault victims, as well as homeless people, before pardoning Teddy and Mitty, 2 turkeys from Windmere, who are named after former President Theodore Roosevelt and his mother. He said the North Dakota Turkey Federation would give 12 turkeys to both Abused Adult Resource Center and the Ruth Myers Hospitality House. Monday was the first time Burgum, a first-time Republican, presided over the ceremonial pardoning. He was traveling last year, and Lieutenant Gov. Brent Sanford took over those duties. Yeah.
I didn't know there was a turkey federation in North Dakota.
Yeah.
Since you're the North Dakota farm boy around here, can you tell me about that?
Actually, I've never heard of it, but what I find interesting about this article, he pardoned 2 turkeys, and then he sent 12 other ones to their death.
That's true. Well, I mean, it is going to be Thanksgiving, and it's all about eating turkeys. We did hear that there has been a USDA action finally on the recall of turkey meat that's been contaminated with salmonella, which we reported on last week. And now to turn to national news, in Teen Vogue, it was reported that norovirus has broken out among California wildfire shelters, as if the people displaced by the fires didn't have enough to deal with.
Yeah, exactly.
First responders continue to fight the Northern California campfire, the deadliest and most destructive in the state's history. Displaced residents are facing another fight, a virus spreading among the shelters. On Thursday, November 15th, Butte County Public Health Department reported 145 people in 4 shelters have become sick with norovirus, a highly contagious gastrointestinal illness. The number of sick people is increasing every day, the department's statement said, noting 25 people have been treated in hospitals. According to the CDC, norovirus spreads quickly via contaminated food, water, and surfaces and direct contact with infected people, and is common in settings such as schools, child care centers, and healthcare facilities. And while outbreaks happen year-round, they mostly occur between November and April. Most affected people develop symptoms, including diarrhea, vomiting, nausea, and stomach pain, 12 to 48 hours after being exposed, and they recover in 1 to 3 days. There is no treatment for norovirus, but it can cause severe dehydration, so the CDC recommends drinking lots of liquids to replace any fluid loss. And though it's extremely contagious, there are steps people can take to prevent it or minimize its spread. Of course, you need to wash your hands regularly and thoroughly, carefully cleaning products before you eat them, disinfecting surfaces like countertops and bathroom sinks with bleach-based cleaners, and wash any contaminated laundry immediately. Butte County Public Health Department also notes the importance of staying home when sick, including for 2 days after your symptoms dissipate, as it is possible to still be infected and spread the virus. Of course, in the case of California shelters, people don't have any homes to retreat to when they get sick, and the fear of getting sick is actually leading some people that are displaced to avoid the shelters altogether. Shauna, a 21-year-old woman, told BuzzFeed News that she was sleeping in her car with her mother and 2 daughters, a 3-year-old and a newborn. She said, "She barely has an immune system," talking about her newborn. "I'm afraid of what would happen." The Butte County Public Health Department said it is working with the Red Cross and other partners to minimize the outbreak. The officials are adding medical staff at affected shelters, providing separate hand washing and bathroom areas for those infected, monitoring residents for symptoms, and using cleaning supplies that are effective against norovirus, among other actions.
Wow, that's horrible. It's horrible, like you said, that for the people that are actually going to shelters have no home to go to. And this outbreak, and it's actually not identified how it got, where it came from. It's like I don't know how common that is, but when you have a lot of people, crowded into small spaces, any sort of pathogen is going to spread easily. So I do feel really bad for the people that are being affected by that, because they need to be safe and warm and in good places so they can rest and sleep and try to recover from the devastations that's happening in their community. So this actually is another thing on top of that.
Well, when you think about any natural disaster that we have seen that occurs in the world, it's not just the natural disaster that takes lives. Frequently, there will be a lot of loss of life after a disaster because of the conditions that the disaster creates.
That's true. Unsanitary
conditions, a lack of medical facilities to treat people that become sick, a lack of, electricity, for example, what happened in Hurricane Maria. There's people that are elderly, people that are already sick or disabled or have, the need for blood treatments or, transfusions or life support. Those people will usually go first in a natural disaster like this. And I was noticing when I was looking at the media coming out of California, there's a lot of these little camps that are just kind of popping up in different places, and Walmart parking lots, for example, and other places that people just don't have access to running water and bathrooms and all of the facilities that you need to keep clean and keep your clothes clean. And they're just, living out of tents and boxes in their cars. So it just, it's scary times.
Yeah,
I'd hope that people also watch or listen to our Mexican Crossing Line show that we just did about how there are some predatory groups that are funneling a contingent of the migrant caravan toward the border of California. And they're trying to cross people into California and create camps there. I think that this is not only a horrible idea, it is a tax on the resources of an already devastated state at a time when they definitely don't need that problem.
Yeah, and that show's going to be on at 7 o'clock tonight. We're putting the local national news daily rundown on at 6 o'clock tonight because that show needs to air at 7, and it's about a 4-hour show, so there's a lot of information. You can listen to it on KPPP-LP 88.1 on your dial.
If you want to get an update on what's happening with that caravan and the people that are exploiting it, the show will be in both English and Spanish. And then we have news from CNN. This is an update on the Acosta press credentials being revoked. CNN is reporting the White House just told Jim Acosta that his press pass will be suspended again when the court order expires. This letter comes just 2 days after a judge ruled in favor of CNN and Jim Acosta, saying the White House should afford due process to reporters before revoking their credentials. So, before I even start to tell you about this, I think maybe when it comes to how petty the White House and President Trump will be, we could start making predictions and even make bets on what's going to happen. Because remember, I said I think they're going to dig their heels in from what he's saying about how he's going to create these rules. The way that he was reading the ruling from the judge seemed to indicate that he was going to go the petty route. And indeed, he did. The White House did. White House officials have now reportedly sent a letter to CNN's Jim Acosta indicating they will suspend his press pass once the temporary restraining order that requires them to restore Acosta's credentials expires. This was reported late Sunday night by CNN. The 14-day order was issued just Friday, and unless the judge extends it, it will expire at the end of the month. In a ruling seen as a victory for press freedom, U.S. District Judge Timothy Kelly, appointed by President Trump, ordered the White House to temporarily restore Acosta's press pass on Friday while he considered the merits of the case and the possibility of a permanent order. He said the White House has an obligation to afford due process to Acosta before it can revoke or suspend his access, and found that the White House's decision-making process in this case was, quote, so shrouded in mystery that the government couldn't tell me who made the decision, close quote. But on Sunday night, CNN's Brian Stelter of Reliable Sources said in his newsletter that White House officials sent Acosta a letter stating that his pass is set to expire, to be suspended once again once the restraining order expires. Stetler did not report the text of the letter or say whether it came only to Acosta or was submitted to the judge in this case. It was unclear whether the White House provided reasons that would somehow pass for due process in the eyes of the judge or a chance for Acosta to respond. The parties are expected to file status reports Monday explaining how they'd like to proceed. The White House is continuing to violate the Fifth and First Amendments of the Constitution, CNN said in a statement. These actions threaten all journalists and news organizations. Jim Acosta and CNN will continue to report the news about the White House and the president. The CNN and Acosta, the network's chief White House correspondent, as you know, sued the White House and press secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders last week after they suspended his press credentials following Acosta's minor altercation with a White House intern who tried to take a microphone out of his hand as he questioned the president. Sanders accused Acosta of placing his hands on a young woman when explaining why Acosta's pass had been suspended, but Kelly found that this allegation was likely untrue. Ted Boutros, an attorney for CNN and Acosta, told Stetler on Reliable Sources that in the absence of reaching an agreement with the White House, that they plan to seek a preliminary injunction blocking the White House from suspending Acosta's credentials for a much longer period of time as the case moves forward.
That is so petty that they're when it expires, they'll just get it revoked again. You know, it's basically they're not actually heeding the warning from the judge that there's a validity in this case, that they have acted wrongfully and they are causing harm and damages, that they would just say, well, as soon as this 14 days is up, we're going to just suspend you again and have no process for it, which the judge has actually said that's why it has to be restored, because they don't have a process, and they're just going to not have a process and do it again. I think that's horrible and irresponsible, but, it's not surprising, actually.
Yeah, Trump always takes the low road. If he has an opportunity to act like a bully, he will. Fun fact, the attorney for CNN, Ted Boutros, is from Bismarck. Did you know that?
Oh, that's right. He was on the news the other night. So a Bismarck native is the head attorney for CNN?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Well, definitely on this case. I think that this case, I think Kelly is going to have to rule on a permanent injunction against the White House to force them to allow Jim Acosta to go into the press
corps.
Press corps. I mean, I don't see any other way that you can stop this president and this White House from violating the Constitution, unless you basically force them. Mm-hmm. That's how it's looking right now.
That's right. Well, we're going to give you a little update on the California wildfires. Nearly 1,000 uncounted. There's nearly 1,000 uncounted in Camp Fire. This is from live updates from CBS AP. The death toll from the Camp Fire in Northern California increased by 1 Sunday to 77, while the number of people unaccounted for has decreased to 993 people. Wow. The blaze was 2/3 contained as of Sunday night after consuming some 150,000 acres. In Southern California, just outside of Los Angeles, the Woolsey fire was 91% contained after burning 96,949 acres and killing 3 people. Dense smoke from the fire has been smothering parts of the state with what has been described as the dirtiest air in the world. Rain is in the forecast for midweek, which could help firefighters but also complicate the challenging search for remains. It's a disheartening situation, Butte County Sheriff Corey Honia said. As much I wish I could get through this before the rains come, I don't know if that's possible. This rain could also trigger mud and rock slides in Southern California. And here's some California wildfire fast facts. These are his current numbers as of Sunday night from CAL FIRE. Campfire Fire, location Butte County, 150,000 acres burned. It's 65% contained. There's been 77 fatalities confirmed, 993 unaccounted for, and 12,794 structures destroyed. And they expect to have full containment of the fire by November 30th. The Woolsey Fire, the location is in Los Angeles County, Ventura County, 96,949 acres of it burned. It's 91% contained. There's been 3 fatalities confirmed and 1,452 structures destroyed, 337 damaged, and full containment is expected by November 22nd, which is only a few days from now. This fire, it's still raging on. These are hopeful numbers, but look at all the missing people. There's over, close to 1,000 people that don't know if they're alive, if they're dead. There's no communication. Families are worried. Nearly 1,000 people are not accounted for after these fires. And the devastation, it just must be horrible. And then how do you ever come back from that? Everything's destroyed and burned.
What's really terrifying to me as a citizen of this country is that normally this is the time when you look toward your leader for comfort and for support. The federal government lets you know they're going to have your back. And even before he made his recent trip to California, to Paradise, Trump was criticizing the people in California for their mismanagement of their forests.
That's right. He said he would even keep any federal funding from going to them, which they needed emergency federal funding right then, and he threatened to take it away.
It's like the first instinct of this president is to be cruel and unusually mean to the victims of any situation. Mm-hmm. In fact, there is an article in the New York Daily News titled by Linda Stotzi, titled, "Are Donald and Melania the cruelest first couple ever?" It's an interesting read. I highly recommend that folks go and check it out. But she starts off by saying, "Did Imelda Marcos and Evita Perón have a baby and no one told us?" Melania Trump, whose platform was supposed to be about kindness and the end of bullying, has become, along with her husband, half of the unkindest, least gracious, and shockingly cruelest couples to occupy the White House. Apparently, Melania believes Donald when he referred to a presidential term as a reign, because so far what we've got is the Trump reign of terror. Nothing is too petty for it to escape their cruelty. Take the madness last week. As unbelievable as it seems, Melania endangered national security by demanding the firing of a deputy national security advisor, Mira Ricardel, because of a personal slight. It seems Ricardel has the unmitigated gall to object to the size and seating of Melania's Elvis-sized entourage and its correspondingly small press contingent on the plane for her disastrously embarrassing pith-helmeted trip to Africa. If that wasn't bullying and unkind enough, the Be Best First Lady's office then became the worst by publicly humiliating Ricardel with a statement that read, "It is the position of the office of the First Lady that Ricardel no longer deserves the honor of serving in this White House." Off with her head! The statement was issued minutes, mind you, after Ricardel had attended a presidential gaffe-filled event for Diwali, which, ironically enough, is supposed to symbolize victory over light, a victory of the light over darkness and good over evil, knowledge over ignorance, right? But the First Lady, whose father is reportedly a former member of the Communist Party, must think this is how you act when you're the wife of a cruel dictator. And she's right. This is exactly how a cruel dictator's wife would act. But Trump has not been far behind her in another disastrous press conference with people in California, with the mayors there. He called Paradise, California, where we saw those giant wildfires, pleasure.
That's right.
Repeatedly.
Yeah, it was, what was the name of the town? It was
Paradise.
Paradise, yes. And he's like...
That's what he must think of paradise.
It is pleasure.
It's all comfort and pleasures for Trump.
I remember the mayor was looking at him because he says, the town's name is perfect, it's pleasure. And the mayor's looking at him like, it's not pleasure. It's paradise. Yeah, they all said it in unison. It was almost too much. But that's not the only gaffe of the president. He was telling people there... And he's been doing it on the news. Who was it that just recently interviewed him? I can't remember his name. Either.
Chris Wallace?
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's who it was.
Chris Wallace did an interview with him, and he just went on a tangent about raking and talking. He's repeated several times now, and he did so recently in California, that the president of Finland, and he had a conversation about forest management, and that Finland, because they're a forest nation, or a nation that has a lot of forest, they have better management, and that involves raking. And he had a conversation with him about the raking. And the president of Finland has now publicly embarrassed Donald Trump, saying he never had that conversation with him. Yeah, he had to come out. Finland's president, Sauli Niinisto, excuse me if I'm saying that wrong, said that the topic of raking never came up in their conversation. And I mean, the idea that you're going to compare a country that has, 50 some inches or 60 some inches of rain compared to the amount of rain that are seen in California, is ridiculous. I mean, they're two different kinds of countries with two different climates, with two different amounts of precipitation falling on them. Do you think that these gaffes of his are part of his mental breakdown, or is he just being intentionally ignorant?
I'm not sure. Probably both. I think it's part of his problem, because who would talk that way? Who would have those sorts of reactions? And who would look so stupid and naive every time he speaks to people publicly?
I don't know. Our president?
Yes, exactly.
Sadly, it's our president. Well, in other news, this is from the Inquirer, dailynewsphilly.com. We found that Kate McClure says that she had no part in the GoFundMe scam to support homeless man Johnny Bobbitt. You may recall that there was a GoFundMe that raked in $400,000 to support a homeless man. The couple was called out by that homeless man on national television for keeping the majority of the money and spending it on trips and expensive purchases, and not giving it to him, whom they raised it for, and that couple then attacking the homeless man and saying that he was an addict and that they didn't trust him with his money, but that they were going to set up some kind of trust for him.
Oh, yeah.
It turns out they were all in on it together.
Wow.
Now the news is saying Kate McClure, who's accused of creating a fake GoFundMe account to help a homeless man that went viral and amassed more than $400,000, secretly recorded a phone conversation with her boyfriend and insisted that he was the one who concocted the entire scam. You started the whole thing. You did everything, McClure told Mark D'Amico in a taped conversation her lawyer played Monday on Good Morning America. On the tape, played during a segment about the bogus campaign to aid Johnny Bobbitt, McClure was heard saying, "I had no part in any of this, and I'm the one taking the fall." McClure and D'Amico, along with Bobbitt, were charged last week with theft by deception and conspiracy after the Burlington County Prosecutor's Office announced that the GoFundMe campaign they started in November 2017 was based on a lie. Prosecutors say that the three conspired to tug at the heartstrings of the public and duped more than 14,000 donors worldwide. The three made up a story that McClure ran out of gas on I-95 as she was on her way into Philadelphia, and Bobbitt came to her rescue using his last $20 to get her on her way, prosecutors said. McClure and D'Amico set up a GoFundMe campaign that they said was so designed to repay Bobbitt's kindness. They told donors they just wanted to buy him a home and raise money to ensure his financial stability. McClure, D'Amico, and Bobbitt made national television appearances and told their feel-good story all over. The response was overwhelming, and they quickly raised hundreds of thousands of dollars. By March, the money was gone. Spent, prosecutors say, on vacations, a BMW, gambling excursions, and designer handbags. All along, Bobbitt was in on the deal, authorities say, spending tens of thousands of dollars, some of it on drugs. But the couple's relationship with Bobbitt soon soured, and by the summer, he was back on the street panhandling for money and drugs. In anger at being denied what he considered his fair share of the GoFundMe money, Bobbitt sued, alleging he was scammed. Prosecutors launched an investigation that led to the criminal charges. The three now face the prospect of 5 to 10 years in jail if convicted. McClure and D'Amico were briefly in custody, then released, awaiting a December 24 court hearing. Bobbitt is in Curran Fromhold Correctional Facility in Philadelphia, awaiting extradition to New Jersey. GoFundMe, meanwhile, he said, it will refund all of the money donors contributed. McClure and D'Amico, who lived together in Florence Township, Burlington County, have since split up. Monday's television appearance signals McClure's intention to mount a vigorous defense. Her lawyer, James Garreau, has said D'Amico was the mastermind of the scheme and McClure his unwitting accomplice. The tape played on Good Morning America appeared to support that. Prosecutors, however, say that they have a trove of text messages that make clear McClure conspired with D'Amico and Bobbitt to devise the false narrative and steal from unsuspecting donors. In one text message made public last week, McClure admitted to her best friend that at least part of the story the trio told the public was untrue. Okay, so wait. The gas part is completely made up, she wrote in a message, included in an affidavit of probable cause for her arrest. I had to make something up to make people feel bad, so shh about the made-up part. Text messages obtained by prosecutors show McClure's friend and even McClure's mother told her that the scheme could get her in trouble. My mom just called me and said that people go to jail for scamming others out of money, McClure said in a text to her friend November 14, 2017. This gas story is going to backfire, the friend wrote in a text to McClure the following day. Nah, it's all good, McClure replied. Months later, in March, the friend again warned McClure that she could be in legal jeopardy and suggested that she donate the balance of the stolen funds. I'll be keeping the rest of the money, expletive, thank you very much, McClure replied. Presciently, the friend said, he could out you. So wow. What do you make of this mea culpa? I didn't do it. It was my husband.
Yeah, it's just people are scrambling and throwing each other under the bus. And the idea, the thing that resonates with me is hearing this story is the way it reminds me of all the fakes that were at Standing Rock who were basically, scamming the GoFundMes. And there was so many GoFundMes going on, and so little accountability to where this money was going. I never knew that GoFundMe could actually end up in someone being prosecuted. So it's like there should be some sort of safeguards and some sort of accountability, because in our situation, we're supposed to provide receipts and have documentation of any money we receive, but we're a nonprofit, so we are accountable to different policies and laws that we need to work with. As an individual, this whole GoFundMe thing, it allowed people to get a bunch of money and basically fake their way, like the Water Protector Legal Collective, who raised millions of dollars. They didn't do it just on GoFundMe's. They had multiple platforms of donations going to multiple places. And so that donors get their money restored, I think, is an excellent thing. I've ended up, restoring people's money from, things donated to us, and I refunded their payments. It's an easy thing to do. But when they do it themselves, I think it shows that sort of accountability, especially being in question. And what bothers me is that then the good things, the things that people really need funded, have a lot more scrutiny on them. You're going to have to prove yourself and have some sort of accreditation or some sort of authentication that what you're doing is actually real. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's going to hold up people. I mean, I've seen people on there that are needing operations and they don't have health insurance, and they're in need of money for their operations. And for that, if people wanted to donate to that, they get cautious and they might not donate to the causes that are actually true causes. So it's kind of bittersweet for me. I like the accountability, especially for the scammers, because I've seen so many of them taking in so much money and for fake causes. But at the same time, it worries me that the people that have really legitimate causes aren't going to be served, and it's not going to be an avenue for the public to support it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how I feel about the ability to raise money online, but there are a lot of scammers out there, and I think people really just need to do more homework on the background of individuals. Look at who set up the GoFundMe and find out if they're a real person, first of all, because some of the GoFundMes that we've reported on that were defrauding people were set up by people that you couldn't trace back to. Yeah. Like in the Marcus Mitchell, where he said that he was shot. This is in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He said he was shot. He was at Standing Rock and said he was shot there and lost an eye. And now he's claiming that he was shot in the chest twice, all of which he fabricated and which many of the leaders out at Standing Rock were circulating. And he raised thousands of dollars and defrauded hundreds of people. There is no way to trace back who the GoFundMe was even started by. I know,
and the name on there, and GoFundMe, they have a name of who's actually the administrator, and sometimes they put down where they're at, and this person was in Chicago. So here's someone in Albuquerque that's had incidences in North Dakota, and was trying to get money to travel back to North Dakota for his court date, and someone in Chicago was running his GoFundMe, and it's like, how does that work? And that would show me right away that if there's someone that's not directly connected to the person or the area that they're actually raising the money for, and they're doing a GoFundMe, that better be clear in their description. In fact, they should have some sort of clear description of who the administrator is, so you actually have a trackable real person instead of someone who's fake.
So make sure you do your homework before you give online. If you can avoid giving online and you can send money directly to a person through a check or some other traceable form that you're sending it to an address, that's the best way to go, because now you're tracking and you have a trail, a paper trail that follows your donation. But definitely look out for those frauds.
Definitely. Well, here's some other news. WOSU Public Media reports. There's been a lot of attention given to the contentious heartbeat bill, which bans abortion at the point that the fetal heartbeat can be detected. It passed the Ohio House earlier this week. But Republican lawmakers are considering another bill during this lame duck session that would ban abortions entirely. House Bill 565, which was introduced in March, would allow criminal charges against both doctors and pregnant women seeking abortions. It would characterize an unborn human as a person under Ohio's criminal code, meaning abortions could be punishable by life in prison or even the death penalty. There are no exceptions, even in cases of rape, incest, or danger to a woman's life. Jamie Miracle with NARAL Pro-Choice Ohio says the bill would punish both women and doctors. NARAL and Planned Parenthood are spending money on advertisements opposing the bill. This could criminalize women who have miscarriages that might seem suspicious to someone, or could criminalize in vitro fertilization procedures that might end up with an embryo. Miracle says, this is not one of the bills Ohio Right to Life has targeted for passage, but the organization's president, Mike Gondekaz, is hoping for some legislation to go before the U.S. Supreme Court as soon as a way to challenge the 73 Roe v. Wade decision. We need to continue to pass legislation and an incremental approach, which is what Ohio Right of Life does, Gondekaz says. While this bill is currently being considered by the House's Health Committee, it's not likely to pass this year. In 2017, an Ohio law went into effect that bans abortions after 20 weeks. The heartbeat bill that passed the Ohio House would ban abortions as early as 6 weeks.
Man, that is terrifying. It sounds like, an episode of the Handmaid's Tale is happening in real life. Well, I did say that once they put Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court, they were signaling the end of abortion rights in America. And I told you states were just going to start doing, this exact thing. And if you don't think that this is a real threat to the end, because Ohio's doing it now, but that means other states are going to follow suit. I think you're being a little bit too optimistic about the future of women's reproductive rights,
and especially since it's been a states' rights issue. States have been passing this legislation in the hope to get it in front of the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. And it's just inevitable that it's going to happen. Something's going to get passed out, and it's probably going to be, something like this or something that's, really wacky. And they've done a lot with the heartbeat. And what they're doing is they're defining the beginning of a human being. They're defining when life begins. And it's been an argument in the choice, pro-choice, anti-choice movements. When does life begin? Is it begin at conception or does it begin at viability? And, that's one of the reasons that Roe v. Wade was actually won in the Supreme Court, because it was determined that the human life begins once the baby is viable, can live outside of the womb.
Right.
And they're going to change that to once there's a heartbeat, it's a human being and you're going to be doing murder. And the Planned Parenthood people brought up a good point that, a miscarriage could result in you being a criminal.
That's terrifying because, they have already used state laws to criminalize women that have miscarriages or, and I mean, the other concern I have is how this law is going to be applied, because when you have to check for the heartbeat, you know what that means. Any woman that is requesting an abortion is going to have some invasive procedure. Mm-hmm. You know how they check for those?
Well, I thought they were doing ultrasounds at the clinics here.
Yeah, but they stick in. It's not an ultrasound over the, outside of your body. It's an inside of your uterus ultrasound.
I didn't know that.
Yes, as a woman, I can confirm this is how they do it, because before 3 months, when the baby is too small, they have to do an ultrasound that involves invasive, like putting things inside of your uterus, and that's it's not a pleasant thing. No. It just, to me, it signals that we're going to continue to lose more of our rights in America, and it's very chilling that this is happening. Miami Herald is reporting that Brenda Snipes, the controversial and embattled supervisor of elections, has finally submitted her resignation on Sunday. Snipes' resignations, first reported by the Sun-Sentinel, came only hours after her staff ended a brutal 2-week stretch in which they misplaced 2,000 ballots during a statewide recount, mixed about 24 invalid ballots with about 200 good ones, and blew a deadline to submit machine recount results to the state. Snipes was attacked as corrupt by President Donald Trump and other Republicans, accused without evidence of trying to steal the U.S. Senate election by Rick Scott, and maligned as incompetent by U.S. Senator Marco Rubio. Egged on by the allegations, Republican protesters spent days outside of Snipes' Lauderhill headquarters during a state-mandated recount, claiming that she was rigging the elections. The Florida Department of State provided Snipes' letter of resignation on Monday morning. It was sent to Governor Rick Scott, and the effective date is January 4th. It has been my passion and honor to serve as the supervisor of elections for Broward County voters, Snipes' letter began. When I was appointed to this position on November 20th, 2003, my initial commitment was to serve out the remaining term of office and pass the torch to the person who would be elected in the next cycle. Needless to say, that was almost 15 years ago. And I have to interject there, and Florida has been a nightmare every election ever since then.
That's right.
She goes on in her letter, although I have enjoyed this work tremendously over the many election cycles, both large and small, I'm ready to pass the torch. Therefore, I request that you accept my letter of resignation effective January 4th, 2019. Attempts to reach Snipes were unsuccessful. An employee of her Fort Lauderdale office said at 2 p.m. press conference had been scheduled, but Snipes' administrative assistant now says that information was incorrect and no press conference is scheduled.
No, she's not talking.
I did hear rumors that she cited the desire to spend more time with her family as one of the reasons why she was leaving.
Boy, yeah, what a mess. What a mess, that we have elections in our country, and with the technology the way it is, that we can't actually really count the votes, and which puts suspect on all voting for me. Even this North Dakota numbers that we just read earlier in this program, that there was 48% of people cast their ballots early. To me, that's a real big warning. A really big warning, because we've seen, like even in Florida, the whole absentee ballots and the other ballots that aren't counted, and they're brought in late. And so I don't trust early voting at all. I think it's very convenient. It gets people excited, but I don't think it's an accurate way of actually measuring an election.
Oh, it is a nightmare, and it has been a nightmare in Florida. I'm just hoping that the incoming new person will not continue the bad reputation of Florida in elections. And international news, we've been waiting to hear what the president will do to sanction Saudi Arabia for the murder of Washington Post reporter Jamal Khashoggi. But now we are hearing reports from The Hill that CIA has made an assessment in a report that Khashoggi's killer was the Prince Mohammed bin Salman, that he ordered that murder.
Yeah.
Trump is now saying that report is premature. President Trump on Saturday called reports of CIA assessments and concluding that the journalist Jamal Khashoggi was murdered on the orders of Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman premature. Speaking to a pool of reporters in California after touring damages caused by the wildfires in the state, the president stated the CIA had made no such assessment yet. It did. And touted the release of the CIA's report over the next few days. They haven't assessed anything yet, he said. It's too early. That was a very premature report, Trump said Saturday when asked about the Washington Post report about the CIA assessment. I'm sorry, I can't stop laughing.
Yeah.
How does he just... there's a report...
Right in front of him.
It's for...
Yep, in front of everybody.
He just denies reality. Like, you can look at reality right in front of you and he'll go, nope, that's not what you're seeing.
I know.
It's crazy.
Yep.
We're going to have a report on Tuesday, he said. It will be very complete. In the meantime, we're doing things to some people that we know for a fact were involved, and we are being very tough on a lot of people, he added.
Wonder who.
Well, that's the most incomplete thought.
Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, we're doing things to some people. I mean, this sounds like a Mad Lib. It's just got blanks in it everywhere. You don't know what the heck the real story is. The president's remarks followed a Washington Post article Friday claiming the CIA intercepted a call from the Crown Prince's brother, Khalid bin Salman, urging Khashoggi to enter the Saudi consulate in Turkey, where he reportedly told Khashoggi he would be safe. It was Khalid bin Salman who guaranteed Khashoggi he would be safe in the Turkish embassy.
Wow.
Early Saturday, Trump told reporters that he was expecting a CIA briefing at the latest intelligence on Khashoggi's disappearance and death from the CIA later in the day. We haven't been briefed yet. The CIA will be speaking to me today, he said, before the Department for California. As of this moment, we were told that he did not play a role. We're going to have to find out what they say. The Saudi government responded to the Post's report Friday, calling it false assessment of what occurred at the Saudi consulate in Turkey where Khashoggi was last seen. Quote, the claims in this purported assessment are false. We have and continue to hear various theories without seeing the primary basis for those speculations, a spokeswoman from the Saudi embassy said in Washington on Friday.
Well, like you said, when it's right in front of him, he denies it, because, and also this is an issue that he's wanted to bury ever since it first came out, that because he is trying to show this allegiance to the Saudi prince and royalty and doesn't want to hold them accountable. And again, we have to remember this is a journalist who is not a citizen, but had a permanent residency in this country. And he's being treated like it doesn't matter because he's not an American citizen. And he basically is essentially a citizen in the sense that he's allowed to work in this country and has a function for our community, and the person is dead. And the Trump administration doesn't care about him and wants to have this relationship with the Saudis that is based on his own self-interest and not the interests of our community or the protection of our journalists.
I'm just terrified of the callousness, the coldness of Trump toward this murder of a reporter. I mean, we just did a report on the press passes once threatening to revoke the press passes at the end of the
14 days
that the judge just ordered for CNN's Jim Acosta. And the press and the president have been largely silent. I guess I was expecting the press in America to rally more for their reporter, and Trump's, when he was first asked about Khashoggi's murder, his first reaction was so gross. He said something to the effect of, he's not a U.S. citizen.
Yeah.
And, I thought, well, he's a reporter for the Washington Post. Hopefully, the reporters of America, the press and the media of America is going to, speak out against this, and they're not going to parse lines about what country of origin reporters are from, given that, one, we're a melting pot in America, and two, people have correspondents all over the world.
Yep,
and
exactly.
You need correspondents that speak the languages of other countries where the news is coming from. So newsrooms, especially big ones like the Washington Post and CNN, etc., are going to have a variety of foreign nationals that work for them that may very well be U.S. residents, like Khashoggi was. So for that distinction to have basically played well to this American audience is very frightening, because we really haven't heard much about Khashoggi in the media.
No, we haven't.
And the press, I think, is responsible in part for not making a bigger ruckus about it and holding the White House to account for this lack of action on their part to sanction Saudi Arabia in what has become the most brazen murder and one of the most ugly,
violent,
shocking, violent murders of a reporter that I can remember in my entire lifetime.
Yeah.
So, what do you think will happen in terms of sanctions? I'm feeling as if really the only way that President Trump will sanction and or punish criminally anyone for doing something as heinous as this is if it's done to Melania or Eric, or well, maybe not Eric, but
I think it's right. I don't think that he, even with all the evidence in front of him, he's going to do any real sanctioning or any real punishment, because he'll always spout off that it's inconclusive and it's not real to keep that relationship the way it is, I guess, whatever that is. And the disregard for the lives of journalists is a really big thing. And you're totally right. Is where's the rest of the press, rallying and having a rally cry to protect each other? It's like you're out there on your own, and too bad for you. And we're just going to make sure we're over here and we're safe. That's now is the time for the press to really rally, because the press is being attacked. It's being attacked and dismantled, and journalists are getting killed. And the press needs to stick together and be stronger and stronger.
I think that there's also an aspect of the rising of dictatorships and totalitarian regimes around the globe that U.S. Media and Americans in general are not really paying attention to. It should be frightening to them that this rise in power is occurring all around the globe, and that our president is embracing it.
Yeah.
Finally, in Fox News, this is a really interesting story. A Fox News host confronts Trump. What's going on with Fox lately?
Oh, wow.
I don't even know. First, they join in an amicus brief with CNN to defend the First and Fifth Amendment, and now they're confronting the president?
Wow.
Is this bizarro world? What's going on? They asked him, "You are seen globally as a beacon of repression." Trump told Chris Wallace he would not intervene in Whitaker's move to curtail the Mueller probe. That's shocking.
Oh.
U.S. President Trump said in an interview aired on Sunday he would not intervene if Matthew Whitaker, his acting U.S. Attorney General, moved to curtail Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation of Russia and the interference into the 2016 presidential election. In an interview with the Fox News Sunday program taped on Friday, Trump also said he probably would not agree to sit down to interview with Mueller, who also is investigating whether the Republican president's campaign conspired with Moscow and whether Trump has unlawfully sought to obstruct the probe. Whitaker took over the supervision of Mueller's investigation November 7 after Trump appointed him as the chief U.S. law enforcement official to replace Jeff Sessions, who the president ousted. Whitaker, who Democrats have called a Trump political lackey, in the past criticized the scope of the Mueller probe and brought up the possibility of undermining it by slashing Mueller's funding. Trump, in the interview, said he was unaware of any of Whitaker's past statements about Mueller's probe and that he would not get involved if Whitaker did move to shut it down. It's going to be up to him, Trump said to Fox News Sunday in his interview with Chris Wallace. I think he's very aware politically. I think he's very astute politically. He's going to do what's right. Trump has denied any collusion with Moscow and has called the Mueller investigation a witch hunt. Russia also has denied any collusion. There's no collusion. He happened to be right, Trump said, referring to one of Whitaker's previous statement. Mueller has brought charges against a series of former Trump aides, including his former campaign chairman and his former national security advisor, as well as a number of Russian individuals and entities. Congressional critics have voiced concern that Whitaker could hamper or even fire Mueller. Oh, my God.
Wow.
And this Chris Whitaker, Duke, is a poop show in and of himself.
Yeah.
I mean, he is being investigated currently. He's had to pay over $26 million in fines for his fraudulent company that was supposedly helping inventors get patents for their inventions, one of which was a line of Sasquatch merchandise, and another one is for men with giant genitalia, toilets extra manly toilets.
Yep.
And he's currently being investigated by the FBI for fraud.
Yeah. Well.
And he tried to use his position as a top lawyer in the state of Iowa in his emails to threaten people that were accusing that company that he was on the board of fraud.
Yes, and the investors basically had their money flushed down the toilet.
Well, you know what that means? It means that Whitaker, who is the top law enforcement person in the country right now, wasn't afraid to use his authority and under color of law threaten people for exposing fraud.
Yeah.
That's the guy that the president put in charge of Mueller.
Yes.
And now he is openly saying that he would not stop this man if he tries to squelch the probe investigating him. I don't know what Congress is going to do to try and stop him, but I think that things are going to get ugly really soon. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but U.S. Representative Adam Schiff, who is set to lead the White House Representatives Intelligence Committee after Democrats won control in the chamber in this month's midterm elections, said Democrats will use their oversight powers to investigate any efforts by Whitaker to curb Mueller's probe. And recently, in a tweet, President called this guy, Adam Schiff, Adam, 2 T's at the end of his name. And he called him Little Adam.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, that's our president. And that's the daily rundown. For more news like this, you can follow us on Facebook at Mexican Online, People's Press Project, and KPPP Radio. You can also follow us on Twitter at media_PPP and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Duke 1517.